The operating room had never felt so small, so loud, or so fragile. Monitors screamed in uneven rhythms, gloved hands moved too fast, and panic spread like a visible shadow across the white walls. One wrong second, one wrong decision, and a life would be lost. In the middle of that chaos stood a quiet nurse no one had paid much attention to, until the moment everything began to fall apart. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the hidden strength inside ordinary people, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us why compassion still matters. The hospital was a large teaching facility in the Midwest United States, known for its reputation and rigid hierarchy. Surgeons here were confident, sometimes too confident, and nurses were expected to follow orders without question. The patient on the table that night was a middle-aged man named Thomas Caldwell, rushed in after a sudden collapse at home. What was supposed to be a routine emergency procedure turned into a nightmare when unexpected complications surfaced the moment the surgery began. Blood loss increased rapidly, vital signs dropped, and the carefully planned steps no longer applied. Experience usually brought calm, but even the senior staff could feel control slipping away. At the edge of the operating room stood Nurse Abigail Moore. She was new to the hospital, soft-spoken, and often overlooked. She had been assigned to the night shift, the shift where people assumed nothing remarkable would happen. Abigail did her work quietly, efficiently, and without drawing attention. Some thought she lacked confidence. Others barely remembered her name. What no one knew was that she carried a past heavy with discipline, loss, and knowledge, earned far beyond the walls of that hospital. As the procedure worsened, confusion replaced coordination. Instruments were requested twice, steps were retraced, and the air grew thick with fear. Abigail felt her heart pounding, not with panic, but with recognition. She had seen this before. Not in textbooks, but in places where help arrived too late and mistakes cost lives instantly. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear of the situation, but from the weight of deciding whether to step forward in a room where she was expected to stay silent. Abigail's journey to that operating room had not been simple. Years earlier, she had served as a combat medical specialist with the U.S. Army, deployed overseas where decisions had to be made in seconds, often without backup, often without comfort. She had treated soldiers under fire, stabilized civilians in destroyed villages, and learned how to think when everyone else froze. After returning home, she chose nursing not for prestige, but because she wanted to keep saving lives in quieter ways. She rarely spoke about her service. The memories were not something she shared lightly. In the OR, the monitors dipped again. The situation was now critical. A wrong assumption had been made, and the usual protocol was failing. Abigail's training screamed at her that the real issue had been missed. She could see it in the patient's response, in the pattern of the numbers, in the way the bleeding behaved. But speaking up meant challenging people who had more authority, more titles, and more ego. For a moment she hesitated, feeling the familiar weight of being underestimated. Then she remembered the faces of people she couldn't save because she had arrived too late, or because no one listened. She stepped forward. Her voice was calm, steady, and clear, cutting through the panic without adding to it. She didn't raise her tone or act dramatic. She simply pointed out what everyone else had overlooked and suggested a different approach, one used in extreme trauma cases, one not often taught in civilian settings. The room stilled. Eyes turned toward her, surprised, skeptical, but desperate. Time felt suspended. The decision to listen or ignore her hung in the air. Finally, the team adjusted. The change was immediate. The bleeding slowed. The vitals stabilized just enough to breathe again. Step by step, control returned to the room. Panic retreated, replaced by focused urgency. As the surgery continued, Abigail moved with quiet precision, anticipating needs before they were spoken, guiding without commanding. No one questioned her now. By the time the procedure ended, Thomas Caldwell was alive, still critical but stable. The crisis had passed. Only afterward did the weight of what had happened truly settle. In the recovery area, exhaustion washed over everyone. Some avoided eye contact, humbled by how close they had come to disaster. Others looked at Abigail with new curiosity. Someone finally asked about her background, about where she had learned to handle chaos so calmly. She didn't boast. She didn't dramatize. She simply acknowledged her past service and her training, explaining that experience doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it stands quietly in the corner, waiting to be needed. Word spread quickly through the hospital. The quiet nurse was no longer invisible. But what changed most was not how others saw her. It was how they listened. Abigail continued working the night shift, still gentle, still reserved, but now trusted. Younger nurses began to seek her guidance. Doctors learned to pause when she spoke. Respect replaced assumption. Days later, Thomas Caldwell opened his eyes in the ICU. He would never know all the details, never see the fear that had filled the operating room, but he was alive because someone had the courage to step forward when silence was expected. Abigail walked past the OR one evening, hearing laughter and normal routines again. The room felt less haunted. She knew she hadn't just saved one life that night. She had changed a culture, even if only slightly, reminding everyone that true strength does not demand attention. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that quiet people often carry the deepest strength, please take a moment to like the video, share it, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach others who need them. Before this story ends, we have one special request. Comment below with the words "Quiet strength matters" if you believe that courage doesn't always shout. Abigail Moore went home that morning as the sun rose over the American skyline, tired but peaceful. She knew tomorrow would be another long shift, another chance to be overlooked, and she was okay with that. Because when it truly mattered, when panic returned and hope felt thin, she would be ready again, quiet, steady, and unbreakable.